Hey everybody, this is Erica with Need to Create. Today I'm going to show you how I made my very first cupcake bouquet. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video and want to see more. So I'm going to do my best to explain everything I did, but keep in mind this was my first time ever making one of these, so I definitely would change some things in the future that I'll mention in this video. So the first thing I did was laid out my cups in the shape that I wanted for my cupcake bouquet. Next, I stapled the cups together, kind of near the top, but I learned that it doesn't really necessarily matter where you put those staples, but I found it was easier to keep them near the top. I did this all the way around until all the cups were stapled together. In the future, I'd use clear cups instead of these white ones. Next, it was time to cut out a base for my cupcakes to sit on. An easier alternative would be to use cake boards. Here you'll see me cutting out multiple rounds to use underneath my cups. I just used an X-Acto knife and scissors to kind of shape it a little bit cleaner. Next, I cut out some rounds of styrofoam just to kind of help keep the cupcakes from caving in the middle. So I cut out multiple sizes. As you can see, I'm cutting kind of inside those circles because I want them to taper as they go up into the cupcake stand. Now that I've gone through the whole process, I don't know if the styrofoam is really necessary, but I used it as just kind of a safety net since I had to transport it. Here I'm cutting down one of my 3 rounds that I cut earlier because I realized I didn't need all 3 and I wanted to make a smaller base for the bottom part of the stand. Next, I assembled the cups to make the base. I hot glued the 2 large rounds together, then I connected them with the cups in between the smaller circle. Super sturdy. Next, I hot glued my styrofoam together and then hot glued it to the bottom of my cups. Once that was glued on, I then glued the cups to the top of my base and then reinforced the base with hot glue around the cups, just to make sure this is nice and strong. This next part definitely took some practice. I laid out some tissue paper on top of some cellophane, large enough to reach up around the cupcake stand. I used a Dutch oven lid just to weigh down the cup so it was a little bit easier to work with. This part's a little tricky. So basically you want to pleat the cellophane and then use Scotch tape to tape it in place. So you can see I just kind of work this the best that I can to make it as tight as possible. And I do that all the way around the whole thing. At the end, I use some hot glue just to kind of crisp up the outside edges. And there you have it. This is the ribbon that I originally planned on using, but as you see later in the video, I changed it. Next, I went ahead and made my frosting. I used half a cup of shortening, half a cup of butter, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 4 cups of powdered sugar, and 2 tablespoons of water. Here I'm just creaming together my shortening and butter before I go ahead and add my other ingredients. This is the powdered sugar going in. I do recommend sifting it before mixing. I just couldn't find my sifter. I then added teaspoons of water at a time in order to get the right consistency I needed to be able to pipe the flours. This step definitely isn't necessary, but I added some white food gel just to brighten up my frosting a little bit. Then I just mixed until it was nice and smooth and stored it in a Tupperware until I was ready to use it. Next, I made a delicious dark chocolate cake recipe that I've had for years. It's 2 cups sugar, 1 3/4 cup flour, 3/4 cup baking cocoa, 1 1/2 teaspoon both baking powder and baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 2 eggs, 1 cup milk, 1/2 cup vegetable oil, 2 teaspoons vanilla extract, and about 3/4 cup to 1 cup of boiling water. For extra richness, you can add coffee or espresso in place of the water. Doesn't that look delicious? I found these cute cupcake liners at Walmart that I thought would match pretty well with the ribbon that I ended up putting on the cupcake stand. I used my handy dandy ice cream scooper to fill the cupcakes evenly, popped them in the oven at 350. Once the toothpick comes out clean, they're ready to come out of the oven. I put them on a cooling rack just to help them cool off faster. Next, I mixed my green frosting. Unfortunately, I forgot to record the adding of the dye, but I added some green and just a pinch of red to get this color. Next, I just put a very thin layer of the green frosting onto each cupcake. Here I made a really pretty, rich pink, and I'm going to show you how I fill my piping bag. So I have my piping bag, I have my coupler I put on the inside, and then I go ahead and just snip that just below where it's poking out. I have the piping tip I want to use and the little coupler screw on to hold it in place. My favorite way to fill a bag is to put it around a big cup, and that way you can use both hands to get the frosting into that piping bag. Now we're ready to use our piping bag to make our flower. Just like I did, I recommend going on YouTube and finding other people showing you exactly how to use different piping tips for different types of flowers. I did a lot of research before I started, just so that I had a better feel on how to do these before starting them. The next one is a makeshift rose. I didn't have the right size piping tip, so I just kind of made do with what I had, and these came out pretty cute. Next, I made a bit of a lavender color. Filled my piping bag. As you can see, I'd already piped a few. I just wanted to show how to pipe this one. So you pipe around in a ring, you do a second smaller ring on top of that, and then I forgot to record making a darker purple, but I put a little bit of green on the inside and then did just a couple dots around that green in that darker purple color. I think it came out pretty cute. This next technique, you take frosting and you kind of smear it around the inside of your piping bag, and then on the inside of that you're going to add your second color. This is going to give you a two-tone look when you pipe your flowers. It's so pretty how it's got multiple colors in it. I love this design. And honestly, it was one of the easiest and less time-consuming cupcakes to pipe. This next one, I'm going to show you how I made 3 smaller flowers to put on one cupcake. So here I'm piping a pretty lavender rose, just a little bit smaller than the one I made earlier with the white. I use these little scissors I got from a craft store to place my flower onto the cupcake. Next, I'm making a little pink flower next to that purple one I just put on. I'm going to pipe a little bit of green, a little bit of dark purple around the inside of that, and then I'm piping a white flower. I saw this next part in my research and I just thought it was super cute. Couldn't tell you what kind of flower or greenery it actually is, but I thought it added some nice height to the bouquet. And then here I'm just filling in the gaps with some green frosting with a piping tip that makes it look like leaves. Here's another technique to get 2 colors in your piping bag. You spread it out on plastic wrap, and then you put your middle color right down the center, and then you cut the tip off and you slide it right into your piping bag. Super, super simple. I did this with both white on the outside, green on the inside, and then that darker pink I made earlier, I did that with the green inside as well. Here I'm just alternating the 2 different colors that I just put in piping bags, and I'm doing this all the way around the cupcake until it's nice and full. Isn't that pretty? Here's the ribbon I actually decided to go with, and I put a little bow on it as well. Next, I filled each cup with some tissue paper so that the cupcakes don't fall down inside. I cut some green squares to use under my cupcakes and help me assemble the cupcakes into the cups. I did learn that next time I'll probably cut these squares a little bit bigger just so it's easier to handle the cupcakes. So here I'm just using a chopstick to help kind of place that in where I want it. And ta-da, that's how you do it. Just repeat with the rest of the cupcakes. Here I'm taking that same green from earlier and piping some leaves just to kind of hide some of that white cup that's poking through. Like I mentioned earlier, I would use clear cups next time instead of the white ones. And here you have it, a completed, beautiful cupcake bouquet. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And here's a beautiful birthday girl.